Jeff Bezos, the founder of Blue Origin and Amazon, is one of the richest men on the planet. In this video, we'll cover the vision of his Blue Origin company for expanding humanity into space. To quote Jeff Bezos, "It's this generation's job to build a road to space so that future generations can unleash their creativity. We envision a future where millions of people will live and work in space with a single-minded purpose to restore and sustain Earth, our Blue Origin." Unquote. Blue, as the company refers to itself, believes that by expanding it into space we can preserve Earth, while continuing technological progress which demands ever more resources and energy. The vast amounts of energy needed to power AI, for example, would require building many more power stations all over Earth. Instead, by expanding into space, we can harvest all the available energy from the sun to power AI, computing, manufacturing and processing, without polluting the planet or consuming Earth's land and resources. On this channel, we've covered space-based solar power as a way of collecting and beaming energy down to Earth. This approach offers many advantages, but we must first master building massive structures in space. Humanity doubles its energy consumption every 25 years, a pace that proves unsustainable on a single planet. In space, resources and energy are practically unlimited. By learning to harness the power of space and harvest the enormous resources available, we can grow our economies, technologies and populations. Blue Origin's vision is to make space routine, safe and affordable. Next, let's examine how they plan to achieve that. Reusable rockets to lower the cost of access to space. First, the cost of access to space has to be radically lowered. Reusability unlocks radical reductions in spaceflight costs through reusable vehicles and engines. This spins the flywheel. The more you fly, the cheaper it becomes. The cheaper it gets, the more you fly. Blue Origin's New Shepard suborbital rocket already sends paying customers to the edge of space for a few minutes of weightlessness. With New Glenn, their reusable heavy lift vehicle, they can truly open access to space by lofting 45 tons of payload to low Earth orbit. Each booster supports reuse up to 25 times before refurbishment. In the past, Blue Origin has mentioned even larger vehicles, which would take their rockets into the super heavy lift category. Blue Origin wants to move polluting industries from Earth into space, where they don't cause environmental damage to the Earth, returning our planet to a beautiful natural state. It will be like a garden, like a national park, a place for education, for creativity and for recreation, a place for enjoyment and for nature to thrive. Blue Origin designs all its engines, BE3, BE4 and BE7, from the ground up as reusable propulsion systems. Operational reusability will radically reduce the cost of reaching space. Now let's explore the next step in their master plan. Settle space with orbiting space stations starting in LEO. Blue Origin is developing Orbital Reef, a commercial low Earth orbit destination competing for NASA funding. NASA will be retiring the International Space Station by the end of the decade, but still wants to perform microgravity research and tech demonstrations in space. NASA will fund one or more commercial LEO destinations or space stations. By purchasing regular trips to these stations, NASA hopes to stimulate a thriving LEO economy. This is a nice idea, but the level of funding does not seem anywhere near the amount needed. Given the long list of requirements NASA is expecting these stations to meet, the cost will be high, which calls into question the commercial viability of LEO stations. Hopefully, NASA will agree to higher levels of funding or cut some of the requirements to make these stations more viable. Blue Origin states, "Destinations close to Earth, close to our home planet, new places, places we haven't even dreamed of yet, places that feel like home, places where great work can be done using the resources of space. In space, we can expand humanity. We don't want to leave Earth behind, but preserve it and expand humanity into space. We can have 1 trillion humans in the solar system, which means we'd have 1,000 Mozarts and 1,000 Einsteins. This would be an incredible civilization." Unquote. Our solar system is capable of supporting enormous numbers of people if we build space stations around Earth and further out into the solar system thanks to the vast resources and energy available. The estimate of 1 trillion people or more, all thriving with plenty of resources, does not exaggerate the potential. For instance, in this study, which is linked to in the video description, outer planets can support colonies numbering in the hundreds of billions each. Getting back to low Earth orbit, Blue Origin envisions their space station as a mixed-use business park for research, manufacturing, and habitation. The station could expand in the future as commercial interest in space manufacturing grows. This is a hopeful future, an enduring human presence in space. Space is a long-term solution for Earth. Blue Origin is building all the key infrastructure needed to unlock space, from cargo and crewed lunar landers to fuel shuttles, heavy lift reusable vehicles, and orbiting space stations. Blue Origin's vision for humanity can only become a reality if space is much, much more accessible than it is today. Big things start small. Jeff Bezos talks about certain gates we have to go through, certain prerequisites. Without those gates, such as cheap reusable access to space and orbiting space stations, we will never expand outwards into the solar system. Now let's move on to the final piece of the puzzle. Harvest off-world resources starting with the moon. Once you have low-cost access to space, the next gate involves harnessing the solar system's resources. Space holds far more resources than our planet does. Everyone is familiar with the idea of locally sourced goods, and it's no different in space. Getting all your resources from the bottom of a very steep gravity well on Earth will not lead to an expansive future in space we all want. Space is full of limitless treasures in the form of resources in asteroids, moons, and planets, with the sun's energy freely available to harness for industrial processing and manufacturing. We won't get the full benefit of an off-world civilization until we learn to live off the land and unlock the abundant resources available to use throughout the solar system. The moon is where humanity learns to do all this. The moon has a vast quantity of resources, and if we can learn to harness those resources, we can travel without being dependent on Earth. That's Blue's goal. Travel to space and use resources in space and other worlds to power transportation and build outposts and bases. Blue states, anything we need, we will use the stuff in space to make it, unquote. They go on to say, the moon is the next place. We are going back. It's time to go back to the moon, this time to stay, unquote. Blue Origin is working hard to enable the harnessing of these non-terrestrial resources. They have already produced solar panels using lunar soil simulant. Blue believes not only solar power systems, but power transmission cables, oxygen for propellant and life support systems, as well as lunar water can be extracted. Blue's lunar landers are powered by hydrogen and oxygen, both of which can be produced on the moon. Their Blue Alchemist technology, as they call it, produces silicon with a purity of over 99.999% without using toxic chemicals or water. This same process also produces transmission wires. Blue has stated they will buy lunar-derived propellant from other companies, if available. Given the cost of transporting propellant to the moon from Earth would be exorbitant, costing as much as $1 billion per ton, startups should easily undercut this price once production ramps up. Blue Origin's Cislunar Transporter, a fuel shuttle for cislunar space, enables startups harvesting water ice from near-Earth asteroids to fuel Blue Origin's vehicles. Carmen Plus, a startup I've covered on this channel, is working on providing asteroid-derived water to cislunar space. Blue believes with minor modifications, their Cislunar Transporter could send propellant to Mars orbit as well. Okay, let's move on to look at some of the partners, competitors, and funding sources for Blue Origin. The ecosystem, competitors, partners, funding, and supply chain. A number of other companies are working on similar ideas. Reusable rockets. A number of companies in the US, Europe, and elsewhere are actively working on developing reusable rockets. SpaceX's Falcon 9 so far is the world's only reusable rocket. Rocket Lab's Neutron rocket is the closest to launching a reusable rocket, with their Neutron rocket scheduled to fly soon, perhaps in only a few months from now. Next year we should see launch attempts from Stoke Space, Relativity Space, Rocket Factory Augsburg, and PLD Space. Commercial low Earth orbit destinations. A number of consortiums are working on designing commercial space stations to win funding from NASA. Vast Space's Haven 1 is self-funded and is scheduled to launch on the SpaceX Falcon 9 in May 2026. This single-module space station will validate the technologies needed for space stations and help VAST understand how to operate a station. A number of missions are scheduled to launch to the station once it's operational. Haven 2 will be a larger version that will need NASA funding to be developed. Axiom Station is also actively building hardware for their station. Blue Origin has not released much information recently on their progress with Orbital Reef, and is likely the project has taken a back seat given their need to focus on their engine development and New Glenn launcher. In addition, their Mark 1 and Mark 2 lunar landers take up time and resources. Hopefully we will get more updates on their station in the future. I've not included Sierra Space in the graphic, but they have their own Dream Chaser vehicle that's scheduled to fly to the ISS this year. They're also working on inflatable modules that could be used as a space station, so it's possible they could be a future player in the commercial space station sector. And, of course, SpaceX's Starship could also be used as a space station and did put forward a proposal to NASA, although it wasn't accepted at the time. Harvesting off-world resources. Other than small tech demos on the Moon and Mars, off-world resource harvesting hasn't taken place yet. Production of commercial levels of non-terrestrial resources would require many tons of equipment and power systems to be deployed to the Moon. Ethos Space Resources, for example, estimates an initial lunar water ice mine would require 22 tons of equipment, costing billions to deploy. Until commercial heavy lift vehicles are operational, it's not feasible to harvest resources on the Moon yet. The technology to harvest resources from asteroids doesn't exist either. Still, a few companies are working on the idea. Astroforge is looking to mine precious metals, while Carmen Plus is looking to harvest ice and return it back to cislunar space. National space agencies have managed to return materials from asteroids, but at enormous cost, so much more development of technology is needed before asteroids become a source of resources. Funding for Blue Origin. The source of most of the funding for Blue Origin is from Jeff Bezos, the founder of the company. It's estimated he spends tens of billions of dollars per year bankrolling the company by selling his Amazon stocks. For the New Glenn reusable heavy lift rocket, Bezos' funds are supplemented by the US Space Force to assist with national security payloads. Commercial contracts, including launches for Amazon's Project Kuiper satellites, promise future revenue in the hundreds of millions. Lunar landers such as Blue Moon's Mark 1 and Mark 2 receive significant NASA support, a $3.4 billion human landing system contract for Artemis 5. The Orbital Reef Commercial Space Station benefits from $130 million in NASA's Commercial Low Earth Orbit Development Awards, with additional $172 million for systems. Blue Origin is part of a team working on the space station, including Sierra Space, Boeing and Redwire, helping to reduce the burden of development for Blue Origin. Future tourism and manufacturing revenues are likely for Orbital Reef once operational. Final thoughts. The future looks exciting, with a number of companies working to expand humanity's presence into low Earth orbit, the Moon, Mars and beyond. What is your vision for space settlement? Should we be building orbital space stations and move millions of people into space? Or should we focus on planets such as Mars or asteroids? Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this space news video, consider buying me a coffee to help fund more episodes like this. The link is in the description. Space News Live is on Saturday evening or Sunday morning, depending where you watch from. I recap the videos I posted this week, answer questions, respond to comments and chat messages, cover any missed news, and preview upcoming content. I'd love for you to join if you can. Be sure to like and subscribe so you will see our upcoming videos. We make videos every week covering the space industry, with an emphasis on the smaller space startups that aren't covered so well on other channels. See you soon.